Episode 54, A Sound Man. Introducing Will Jamieson on the BTS Creative Academy podcast, Uncut. So, hello. We are back.
Indeed.
We are back, yes. So this is, it's been a moment since the last one of these. I think it was some point in mid-November. So got to try and remember what to do. One of the things that I start each episode with is a clap, syncing the audio and the video together. If you'd like to join me,
Okay.
We go on 3. So 1, 2, 3, clap.
Lovely.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, clap. And that's a nice way to sync it all together.
Like the old-fashioned clapperboard.
Yes, but cheaper. So welcome, Will, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. Very keen to have someone of your expertise on the Creative Academy.
Certainly the dark arts, as it were.
Yeah, so I've had lots of actors and singers and performers, and I know you predominantly as a technician within the theatre world. You do other...
Yeah, it's been the majority of my theatrical career.
Yes, so I know you do other things, but that's what I know you as, and that was one of the keys to trying to pull you in and having this conversation with you. So yeah, how before we start getting into all the ins and outs and all the technical stuff, how have you been? How's your New Year started?
It's been good fun. Ironically, I've been up in the box over there doing the Railway Children, which you can still see the set of
which we're sat on at the moment because it hasn't been dismantled yet.
No, we all needed a break after that run.
Yes, yeah.
It's quite a long run especially with Christmas on top of it as well. It's nice to just sort of walk away for a week and come back to it. You don't often get that in venues, so
no, because the community theatre that we have here, and we do the Christmas show is a community show. Where no one's getting paid, everyone's volunteering.
No, it's a marvel to see the various people from so many different groups come together to form their own special little company, because then during the rest of the year you sort of bump into people as you do other shows. And so you go, oh, this is where you normally hang out, or this is...
it is an amalgamation, isn't it?
It is.
A collection of different people.
So Adam, who was playing Perks, the station master... I'd just done Waiting for God with over at the Greville up in Little Easton near Dunmow.
Okay.
So that to suddenly sort of go, oh, I'm in Harlow as well. It's like,
Yeah, because they're not on there. It's not like on the doorstep, is it?
No, it didn't seem like a natural progression. But again, it's all a little bit incestuous, dare I say it. So everyone knows somebody else.
Yes, yeah. You can't get far within the community theatre world with not knowing someone that knows someone, or was once in a relationship with someone.
Yes, good old drama.
Yes, there is often drama in the theatre, isn't there?
It's kind of its lifeblood in a way. You know, all of us, even the backstage, have our little passions and you're forced together for months at a time. It's hardly surprising.
Yeah, you build a special kind of relationship in theatre, don't you?
You do. I built so many friendships through it. When Becky and I got married a couple of years ago, you could have run a bus from Water Lane Theatre Company. There were so many of them.
Really?
There, yeah, because we'd spent so many hours with them in rehearsals, etc. You sit there in the bar afterwards and chat all the night away, and it's a lovely little environment to be in.
Is that where you met your wife, through doing theatre?
No, we were at school together briefly when I joined her school for sixth form, so sparked off there. Although oddly, her mother was the prompt for a drama society I did sound for.
Okay.
And I think one of the last things I said to Jane before turning up as the boyfriend was, "Could you shut up? I can hear you at the back of the hall."
It's the mother-in-law.
Yeah. I was
brilliant.
You know, Billy Big Balls teenager.
Of course.
Yeah. Probably did not help my cause, but there you go.
No. Well, it sounds like it was meant to be.
Without going down that line, as soon as we met, easy to chat to straight away, and it just carried on from there.
Yeah, both interested in, because your wife's gets involved with community theatre as well, doesn't she?
Oh, very much. actually, she's a jack of all trades. One of the things I love is she'll give anything a go. So she's prompted, stage managed, done sound, lighting, acted, directed.
And you seem quite similar to that. You get stuck in with all aspects of the theatre, don't you?
One of my mottos in life really is try everything once. And I was brought up for what's the worst that could happen? Give everything a go. And the more you give to a community, often the more you get out of it. So, and especially when I started out, there was a lot more, because I started in the backstage, there was a lot more old men. But a lot of them were very happy to give their time, even if came in as a youngster, you were a little bit under their feet. But they were giving their time for free. And nowadays, people aren't able often to give as much time freely as they used to. I still try and do as much as I can to give others that same opportunity.
Why do you think that's changed?
It's all the society pressures, isn't it? It's looking at the average prices in the southeast versus the average wage over the last 10, 15 years. It's been a bit crazy, and people.
So the cost at what they call the cost of living, crisis that we currently get told we're living in every day, is having a knock-on effect on our creative and social lives, isn't it?
Very much so, both in professional and amateur worlds. Because as much as we love it, it takes time to develop your creative eye and your skills. And if you can't afford the time to develop it, you're never going to be able to get to the heights of where you could do.
So how do you manage to, because you give a lot to community theatre, you are someone that I see almost goes from show to show to show. And you obviously love it.
Very much.
I see you doing the theatre and you obviously love what you do. But how do you manage that?
Again, it's interesting. So being predominantly lighting and sound, we're not needed in the rehearsals till much later on in the process from the directorial point of view, which means that rather than spending 3 months to a show, we spend 2 weeks.
Right.
So you can come in, you see the blocking, you have a meeting early on to sort of get ideas, but I've learnt that actually half the time you have the early meeting, you come in later on and the entire thing's changed.
From a technical aspect, you're coming in at you're the last hurdle, aren't you, in that race to get the show finished? You're that last marker, and you're coming in right at that point, aren't you?
We are. A lot of it, certainly from a sound point of view, you do a lot of your sound work before you get into a venue in terms of sound effects, etc. But still, you tend to be pretty much, apart from maybe costume, we're one of the last things into play, as it were. And because of that, it gives me that little bit of freedom to have 3-4 projects on the go at once, whereas most people can't. Because
no, if you're directing or if you're acting, then it takes up that 3 months to put it all together.
Yes, I made the mistake of trying to direct 2 shows at the same time, and it was hard work.
And was that based upon the experience of having been a technician? That you was like, oh, okay, that I could manage that time, so I must be able to to juggle it being a director.
A little bit. It was also one of them was a pet project where to get the cast I needed, I had a sort of set moment where I was free, they were free. It kind of cemented it. And then the other one was I'd already agreed to that project, and it all just happened to fall in the same. There was a month crossover of rehearsing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the same hall, 2 different shows. Luckily, Becky was involved in one of them, so I got to see her during.
Right. Yeah, because it can put a strain on your personal relationships and your marriage, can't it? And
I genuinely couldn't imagine doing this without someone also involved, because you have to do it to understand quite how all-consuming it takes over your life.
Yes. And it's not like playing a Sunday football, part of a Sunday football league, is it? Where you turn up on a Sunday, you might do some training throughout the week, but you generally turn up on a Sunday morning, have a good game, and go to the pub. Whereas theatre's different, isn't it?
Very much so. Especially if you're acting, you've got lines to learn. you've got rehearsals twice a week, but also you're thinking about costume. There's always a group chat going on about props and marketing and all that, and it takes over your life.
Yeah, it's a dedication, isn't it?
It should be. There's always some people who you can tell those who really do dedicate it to their lives to it. So you listen to some of the people you've had on here previously, and it is their baby. It's their one driving passion.
Yes, yeah.
And I suppose it is my one as well.
Is that for you? Yeah, no, and you do get some people that can come into the community theatre world and do just the social stuff. They turn up to the rehearsals. They might go to the pub as well, and then that's kind of it. They switch off the rest of the time. You do get those people, and that's perfectly fine. That's one of the nice aspects of doing this, I suppose.
Well, I think that's another one of the joys of the theatre is it attracts all sorts. It's not like a sport which tends to attract mainly a type of person. Yes, the club has other people to help run it, but the majority of your team will be sporty types who have that passion. Theatre inveigles its way into such a wide breadth of people.
It really does, doesn't it? The people that I've met through doing theatre, I wouldn't have met them in any other walk of life.
No, and that's... one of my favourite little things is one of the people I consider a close friend now. I met purely because I did lighting and sound for his other half's burlesque and belly dancing show.
Right.
But I only met them through someone else in the drama club who went, "Oh, I know someone who can do that for you." And it again would never have gone to a burlesque class or a belly dancing class myself, but enjoyed doing the technical for them, and they've become firm friends.
Yes, yeah.
So,
why do you think that is? Let's go back more into a bit about the making friends and the connections. Why do you think theatre gives that strong connection? What is it?
As part of the creative process, you tend to bear a bit of yourself, and you can only do that in a room where you feel safe amongst the other people, because they're also bearing a little bit of their soul to do it. And it's that little bit of vulnerability and safety in vulnerability which really brings people together, because you understand the other person a little more, and it's a connection, and that connection is what friendship derives from. So in my opinion, I think that's probably where it stems from.
Yeah, and you can see sometimes it doesn't always work. You do come across, there is sometimes shows where you do get some individuals that aren't able to be vulnerable and they have their walls up, and the group becomes cliquey, and things don't always work between the personalities, do they?
They don't. Humans are complex beasts at the best of times. When you're trying to pretend you're a completely different human, or it's not even always a human. I was a lion in one show, so it's that.
Yes, yeah.
The complexities don't always match. I must admit, if I'm ever, in the rare instances I've been on stage, it is actually something I'm not the best at. It takes me a little longer to warm up and get into that place where I'm happy to reveal. So I suppose, again, that's partly why I prefer not being seen, is I let the sound or the lights do the talking.
Yeah, no, I wasn't aware that you do acting as well. I wasn't aware that you tread the boards.
A couple of years ago, did Sir Toby Belch in 12th Night, which is a great sort of drunkard, loud and jokey part.
Yes, yeah.
A little bit of subtlety in his scheming, but it is very much a comedic role. Great fun, loved it, but yeah, I think my favourite example of this is the first time I went back on stage after 20 years not doing it was with a drama club in Much Haddam. And it was going fine, and then we got to dress rehearsal, and it felt like everyone else just took a step up into another gear, as it all became, and I just sat there going, this is what I've got. This is all I... but actually, they lifted. You felt lifted by them, and once I relaxed into it, you could play with it much more. So after that, I do fully respect the actors who can just turn it on stage, because it's an amazing process to watch.
Mm-hmm. And is that one of the reasons you enjoy directing?
Yes. It's one of those things where for years I didn't think I was that creative. I didn't think I was particularly insightful. But again, I've spent a lot of time in theatres watching people and watching shows and going, actually, I've got some ideas. I'd like to do this. And a couple of shows spoke to me and really wanted to put my own spin on it. And yeah, I've never really thought about that, actually. I'm going to be honest. In some ways it seemed a natural progression. In others, it just seemed like a new challenge. Really wanted to try something fresh. I've been doing this since 2005 on the technical side, so done most things now.
Yes, and that's really interesting that you say there was a point in your life where you didn't see yourself as a creative. And I've met you at a point. I think it was it just after COVID or just before COVID?
It was just after COVID was starting to unlock.
Yeah, so around like the end of 2020. So I've known you for about 3 or 4 years, and I've always just seen you as a creative person, as a technician creatively, and as a theatre director creatively, and you give across that confidence that you that you do have some creative vision. So it's surprising to hear you say there was a point. I know that's genuine for a lot of people, and even for myself. At one point, I didn't see myself as a creative.
It's one of those things where I suppose, certainly on a technical bent, you have that weird mix of having a solid technical knowledge of this makes this work, this makes this work. In terms of a lighting system, I need a lighting desk, I need lights, I need cables, I need dimmers. That doesn't seem in any way creative, because that's fairly prescribed by physics.
Yes. Yeah.
But then you suddenly click that actually it's the way you're using them. You know, artists use paint or pencils. We use lights and sounds to create a world. And it was sort of the dawning realization that actually, no, that would count as a creative. It's very much, and the drive in the industry as well over the last, well, I'd say decade. It's probably a bit longer than that, but in my consciousness, you've seen more and more of the backstage elements push forward in the creative bubble. It used to just be director, choreographer, fight coordinators, the sort of people who really work with actors. But you see more and more things like the lighting design, the sound design, projections and stuff like that are all put in the creative bracket now more than they used to be. And also, I must admit, I'm not the most self-confident person, so I never would have counted myself as, because I'd always go, oh, no, my sister-in-law is creative, she's a brilliant artist, and stuff like that. I'd never be, That
was good. That was going to be my next question. Why is it you didn't see yourself as creative prior to that realization?
I always compared myself to others, and negatively, and I suppose a lot of people do that in their life. And you never quite saw your own work in the way other people see it. There are certain things when you're doing, say, a sound design, you're looking for a bit of creativity. But again, there's only so much creativity you can do with straight plays, because it's a phone call set in the 1930s. You're not going to put a 1990s telephone sound on. But then it's your choice of interlude music. Actually, you can help guide the audience a lot and the scene a lot with the music you're using as part of the show. And part of me didn't accept that was creative. I don't know. It's the word creative just didn't seem to enter.
It didn't seem to fit with what you were doing. Maybe we all need to look at shifting that perspective of what makes us creative, because I guess really it boils down to us using our imagination
Yes.
And being able to play, and the more that we can play with whatever it is that we're doing, whether we're directing someone and we're giving them directions of how to move about the stage, or whether it's the way we turn on the lights and the sound at certain moments within the play, and what colours we're using with the lights, and how we're bringing a world together.
Yeah.
When you do theatre, you've got a box, an empty space that you put a story in. Well, how does anyone do that without imagination? How does all this came from someone's imagination?
Well, I've always been drawn to story-led theatre. It's one of my main things, which surprises a lot of people because they go, oh, you must love, say, Moulin Rouge. And it's a bit like, well, no, yes, it's very technically brilliant, but actually I prefer a much more nitty-gritty story, or a lot more creativity in some of the storyline. So some of my favourite shows are actually only 3-4 people, but the writing means that you're drawn into this world, and because they're so small scale, there's nowhere to hide. You've got to get it right.
I think as human beings, human nature, we want storytelling, don't we?
Because the ancestors used to tell stories around the fireside, and that's how knowledge got passed down. So
that's very, very key and very important. That is how telling stories is how we pass on knowledge. It's not necessarily reading some facts out of a book, and how we, that as human beings we don't kind of get that, do we? We get a lot from books. So don't take me wrong, but I think as a collective, us consuming and watching entertainment, whether that be films or TV or books or listening to music, that is how we make some informative decisions, I guess.
Well, it's an intrinsic part of ourselves. I mean, look at what happened during the pandemic. What did we suddenly find ourselves doing a lot more? Watching TV. We reverted back to the arts. A lot of hobby brands suddenly found their sales going through the roof because people wanted to do stuff.
It always amazes me when people say that the arts aren't important.
It drives me up the wall, that one.
And you often see it I saw it today, a news article from, I think it was in The Guardian online, and it said that, I may be wrong, but I think it's Suffolk Council have cut their arts funding by 100%.
Yeah.
They don't see the value in it at all, the council. They don't see the benefit that gives to the community. If you had someone from the council listening to this podcast, what would you say to them as someone that has received benefit from the arts?
It's not necessarily... The problem with a council budget is you need something tangible and measurable, and that's not something that arts is designed for. You can't measure the confidence brought by someone who's spent ages not having friends, joined their drama club, and suddenly found friends. The confidence from a lot of teenagers get from their youth drama to then go stand up in the workplace. They wouldn't have those life skills if they hadn't have spent ages mingling with people they would not normally mingle with. And in some ways being forced to mingle because you've been cast in a show. And there's so many people who, when you look at education standards, they're all measured in numbers by how well you can tick a box or remember a fact. That's not what we're really designed for, all of us. Some brilliant at it. Others are brilliant artists. By taking away the arts provision, what future are you giving them? It's costing you X amount now, but actually in a few years' time, when those people grow up, what's their lack of life skills going to be costing you in benefits and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's looking at the wider picture, isn't it? I would argue that look at all the things that are wrong with the community, look at all the things that are falling apart, people's mental health, people's loneliness, people's communities are falling apart. They don't exist in the way that they used to. And I would argue that cutting things like art funding is the reasoning behind that, the deep-rooted problem.
Well, I mean, look at Christmas here. How much the community had this as a landmark little piece of joy over the Christmas period. And from last year, Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, so many returning faces. Because we all need that one little bit of away from the reality of the real world. Those 2 hours in Oakworth or in Narnia just give you that breathing space, mentally and physically, just to be somewhere else, not think about the horrors of the world going on around you. And I think we all need that sometimes. We
do. And if you do want to look at metrics, that's quite a good example. If you look at a Christmas community show that a small community theatre like the Victoria Hall Theatre can give, you've got, when it puts on a Christmas show, there can be around 50 to 80 people. If I go back to my Christmas show, there was 80 people involved with putting on the show. That's 80 individuals whose lives are fulfilled for that moment. And we're not saying 800 people. We're not saying 800,000 people. We're saying 80 people that have fulfillment in their life for that period of time. And then you look at the ripple effects of that. Then maybe you can start to go to the benefit of bigger numbers. And then you look at the audience that can come into here. And when you put on 20 shows and it can fill up 100 people in each show, then the numbers get bigger and bigger and bigger. If you really do want to find some figures, it is there.
It is. It's just very hard to...
It is hard to put it on paper.
Yeah. But life is not about paper in the end. It's about the experiences and spending time with people. I know everyone has their own views, but very much for me, I think that's the other reason why I love bouncing between groups, is you get to spend time with so many interesting people, with so many different viewpoints. But if you're in the same group, you do always run the risk of it's always the same people on the stage, always the same, and you get in your little bubble, as you said earlier. Oops, not used to having a microphone there. You get into your own little bubble. So it's nice just to bounce around, sort of.
It is. And that's one of the reasons why I've loved doing this and discovering the podcast. Discovering sitting down and having these conversations and having these one-on-one times of connection with someone. The value that has given me has been tremendous. I think back to before I discovered this, I was very much in a place of being lost in life. Things weren't going well on every level. There were some bits in life that were good. Like it wasn't like,
No,
I'm saying it was the end.
Some little direction to aim for, something to put time and energy into.
Yes, and the podcast has given me that. Through one, having the time and energy of putting into a creative endeavour, but also that connection with someone else, that moment of me and you sitting down and having a conversation about the things that we love and enjoy. You can't put a price on that.
No, and also, as you say, it's nice just to be able to sit down without any sort of time limit or any sort of objectivity. Hang on, wrong word. Any sort of object to get to. It's just a mental meandering, as I like to call them.
Yes. Yeah, and within that, I've found you can have some moments of gold within that. There's some real wisdom can come out of that. Some inspiration can come from that. I think that's priceless. I think you can't put a value to that. And the storytelling that happens within the podcast as well, the guidance and the knowledge that can come from it.
Indeed, and it's lovely having a breadth of different experiences, because we are always a little bit, as a community, focused on those who stand on the stage. Mm-hmm. It is sometimes a bit frustrating that no one tends to, or less people tend to think about those who have spent just as many hours doing the costumes or the props,
yes,
etc. They don't get. They're often in much longer time.
They're all valued voices. They're all valued opinions, and that's what I'm trying to. Yeah, another thing that I'm trying to do with that is to raise those voices of all those different aspects of whether it's theatre, film, all the creative industries, the arts. Throughout, there isn't just one thing you can do creatively. There are many. Which reminds me, actually, when you're saying about the actors and things, it reminds me of the actors that I've had on here. They have all had a question for technicians, whether that's been on the podcast or separately talking outside of the podcast. They've all wanted me to get someone technical on here to listen to, with different kind of questions, and I'll go to some of them now. One of the questions was, do you ever get jealous of the actors on the stage?
Not exactly jealous. It's an interesting dynamic. If a show has gone fantastically, those applause are for everyone. You still get that buzz. Especially clapping, the audience are clapping, the music's pumping, your adrenaline's going. It's sometimes when you've been here from a getting day, so you've been here since 9 a.m, say, and then you're also going to be last out the venue, and it's sometimes annoying when not every performer, don't get me wrong, but there are some performers who swan in just before the half call, do their bit, go out to the bar straight away, see their friends and disappear. Never lift a finger or even sort of think to ask, resetting the stage. Do they sort of go, oh, do you need a hand or anything? Or do you want a hand, or can I do anything? They almost act sort of high and mighty, and it's a little bit, you're sitting there going, really? Mm-hmm. It's been a long, I think the one which
often a technician can be overlooked by sometimes the other members of the cast, or
it can be.
And often I've found as well, that's why they often get a bit of a bad rap. You often, I'm not saying you, but I do know some technicians that get cast and seen as someone that's grumpy and miserable.
Oh, I have grumpy teddy bear. So for about 10 minutes, I will just look so pissed off. It's all right. I'll go away and have a sort of 10-minute and then be back. To the point where a couple of my groups just sort of, they know exactly what to expect, because it's admittedly that one tends to be their outdoor show, where again we can't leave anything out. So you're there first, you're setting up all the tech gear. As soon as the show ends, everyone starts leaving, and of course you've got to take down everything again, pack it all away. And most of the time actors do ask to help, but there's often times where they will just disappear to the pub and you're still there in the drizzle trying to get everything away. And
I guess it's that thing of people going, well, it's not my job. That's not what.
No, and I think a lot.
And is that helpful, being like that?
It's not. I think the other thing is people don't understand it. They don't. They see a microphone, but how many actually know what you need to make this microphone get to the speakers and make it sound good? Without acting, everyone can kind of see the process you go through and kind of understand. Not everyone can do it well, but at least they can understand what you're doing. This stuff tends to be a little more hidden. Again, because...
Well, if you're doing it right, it should be hidden, shouldn't it?
Well, I always say, especially on sound, if you do your job right, no one should know you're there. If it's only when it goes wrong, everyone notices you. Yeah. And I think, again, that doesn't help us in some ways, because if we are doing, if we're doing a perfect show, so what? That's what everyone expects. We make an error, everyone sort of notices. Whereas if an actor makes an error on a line, it can often be smoothed out. And also we tend to only get 1 or 2 rehearsals before an audience sees the show. That's the other thing I always find fascinating, especially there's a group I do musicals. Get in Sunday and technical Sunday, dress Monday, first time we get the band, and then we're open Tuesday. So from a sound point of view, I've basically got one shot at speed with the band to get it right before we've got paying audiences. It's hard, it's not an easy...
It sounds like an intense pressure.
Especially as now they're doing more modern shows, they want everyone to be heard more. So in the old days, you used to have a lovely chorus, so you only mic the principals in the chorus because of the volume of them in people, provide enough sound. Now they're doing smaller chorus numbers. They're wanting everyone mic'd, but that's an extra pressure on trying to handle a desk with 20 plus microphones on a one rehearsal then straight in is an art form.
Yeah. It does sound like an art form. It's a good way to put it, really. And yeah, I completely... I started off as an actor. That was my thing for a long time. And then I started to branch into... I wanted, as an actor, to understand all the aspects that were going on around me. Yeah. I wanted to understand how the lights work, why they work, how the sound happens at this time. And so I started to branch off into doing a little bit of technical stuff. It wasn't really ever for me. I find I can't remember some of the technical stuff in quite the right way. So it doesn't kind of gel with me. It doesn't quite suit me. But I still like to understand how it all works.
And that makes you a better director.
Yes, and then that's what then moved me on to directing.
It's amazing working with so many different directors, and you can tell those who've spent the time trying to learn what the other departments do. Because even if they're not using quite the correct terms, they're still able to get a much clearer image to you of what their thoughts are than those who kind of... They have no clue. They're just sort of going, I want a bit of light over there. And it's like, okay, but what's your aim of having a bit of light over there? What kind of feel do you want? And that sort of...
I guess that's key to a director, isn't it? That's to being able to communicate your vision.
Yes.
Because I guess most of us can have an imagination, but it's getting it from there out to here and into your head so that you can do the thing.
It is, and
that's the trick, isn't it?
But it's also knowing the type of person, because there's some people who work really well visually, of course, and there's some people who don't, and it's watching a director who can smooth their get their ideas out smoothly, much better than I'm getting my idea out now, but to one person, and then say the exact same thing in a completely different way to the other person to explain how to get there.
Yes, because we don't all interpret things in the same way, do we?
No, not at all. Ironically, one of the reasons I loved working with the burlesque group was their director turned around and just kind of went, I want sleazy lighting. But weirdly...
You knew what that meant.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're after now.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas sometimes the other thing is if you don't quite know what you're trying, how to do it, you tend to over give information or over muddy it. And suddenly there's 2 or 3 different ideas floating around. You're not quite sure what they're aiming for. Whereas that was just one sentence, boom, okay, I know what you're after. And if it's not quite right, at least we've got a starting point for you to go, no, this. So it is fascinating watching different directing styles as well. And from a creative point of view, you have the sort of big vision directors who, as you say, have this thing in their head of, and then not leave the actors to their own devices, but the actors have a lot more freedom. Whereas you get the ones who have exactly what they want and exactly what movement they want, and we all respond differently to different directors, but
because there's not one way to do it, is there?
No.
And anyone that thinks that their way is the right way.
So I do a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan, and of course, for years there was one company famous for doing it, and there's a lot of die-hard fans who that is the way you do it. You cannot do it differently. But because they're out of copyright, they're all not. You don't have to license them. A lot of people reinvent them and play around with them. And it's brilliant watching new interpretations come through and how people have reimagined it. But then also to see the backlash of people going, well, that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
In my day.
Why do you think people want to be stuck to a formula then?
I suppose it's like if you've seen a great film and then someone says they're going to do a remake, you're a little bit worried going, but that was brilliant. The problem is theatre is a live beast. You can't. Yes. You can't have that.
Yeah, film is definitely something. Film, I feel like you cement the creativity.
Yes.
You cement it in the time that you made it, and whatever voice or opinions or style you use is of that moment, and it's locked.
It's that snapshot done.
Yes.
It's that snapshot of time done, and once it's done, you can't tweak it.
No, and when it is tweaked, it doesn't feel right. For instance, Star Wars. Star Wars, when it was retweaked 30 years... Well, there was the originals that came out, and then they retweaked it 30 years later, and they cut bits out, and they changed the fact that Han Solo shot first, because it didn't send the correct vibe of what they wanted that hero to give. It was like, no, that was in that moment of that time. Be creative and imaginative to take the story in a new direction rather than adjust that piece of work.
And because of the way theatre is, every actor has their own interpretation based on they go away, read their lines, even within your sort of directorial guidelines of you've told them this. So when I did And Then There Were None, sadly, due to various issues, we went through 3 actors playing one of the roles.
Right.
Each brought such a different interpretation to that character, yet they were all correct based on the script.
On their interpretation.
Yeah. And it was fascinating to watch, especially as you'd already blocked the show and designed the show around actor 1. And then actor 2 came in with his slightly different interpretations, but that meant everyone else reacted slightly differently to him. And so it was looking at it going, so this is now playing slightly differently because of those interactions. Unfortunately, he had to pull out, and a third one came in, and again, we had this little shift again. So it was having the confidence to let people do that as a director as well, sort of going, no, my overall vision is this, but I can see where they've come from with their reading, their interpretation, and that's how that character would have reacted. And it was a big learning curve for me, and just fascinating to watch that process much closer.
I guess as a director, there is I would like to think a choice of, do you want to direct as your vision and that's it, and you want to get whatever you've got in here out and that to be cemented, or do you want to be part of a collaborative project? Do you want to find out what other people can bring to the table?
Yeah, I think I'd have described mine as fairly organic in terms of I had the overall skeleton of the look and certain image points, but how we got to those little image points and even within them to a certain extent was up to the actors. And there were many times where they were sort of going, we had to sort of stop during the block and go, how would we do this? And you sort of jump up onto the stage with them and sort of have a walk through and go, no, that way.
And you discover it. There is a danger, isn't there, in doing that, having, many cooks.
That's why I made sure that I would always jump up and sort of being just as involved in that discussion, so that you could be that kind of
the final word.
Yes, be a part of the group, but still keep that little bit of control of, as you say, too many cooks, that one final voice to just go, no, we're just going to go this way. And in the 3 shows I've directed so far, I've only ever had to do one moment of, I'm the director, this is what you're doing, please go away. So
yeah, you do have to, as a leader, the director is a leader. You do have to, you can open it up to others, but you do have to take back control when it's going too far away from the vision.
And interestingly, from a technical point of view, so if I'm designing lights for a show, it's all very well me going, oh, I'd like to do this and this and this. But of course, I'm not actually the director. The director has got their image and their blocking and their... So there's moments where you're looking at something going, oh, it'd be really good if we could do it this way, because then I can light it this way. And it's lovely to have those sort of conversations with people. But that's when another moment where you can tell those who have tried a bit of lighting and sound and those who are very closed off to trying other stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can approach some of them and go, any chance we could do this? And then you explain your reasons and you see them going, yes or no.
Yeah. And you've reminded me of my first experience as a director. It's just popped into my mind. You've taken me back, and I didn't have a great experience with the person that I'd asked to be the light. It was one person who was doing the lights and sound for me, and he was a friend, and it was difficult working in his style of working because I was the director and I had my vision.
Yeah, but
he also came in with a vision and was very like, no, this is how we turn the lights on, that's it. And there was no, it was like, well, how are we working here? Like, I've got my thing I want to do and you've got your thing you want to do. How's this, who's going to lead this?
And of course, now that you've experienced lighting, etc., as a director, if he goes, well, no, that's the way you do it, you can turn around and go, well, no, actually, you can try this. And that is... But occasionally a director, the lovely thing is, of course, in those collaborative things, a director will suddenly turn around and go, well, no, I'm doing it for this reason. And suddenly you go, oh, okay, but if you do that, we could do...
And I guess I think that's where we resolved the issue, was not just, I want the lights to turn on like this, this and this, and giving instruction. It was, I'd like the lights to turn on in this way because of... Yes. Because that other person might not know the next 4 steps. Especially a technician, like you say, that comes in within the last week of a production. They haven't seen all the rehearsals. They don't know the play inside out. And so if there are steps missed in a lighting state, then that can have a knock-on effect to other creative things that you wanted to do later on. It
does. It's always a tricky thing knowing when to come into the process as well. Certainly for some of my groups, it's really not worth it till very last minute, because certain directors tend to be quite fluid right up until the end.
So there'll be these initial ideas.
Oh, I had a lovely one where we had a mutiny with a production of Scrooge.
Okay.
And the director was replaced with a week to go.
Wow.
And I got a phone call basically going, yes, we're redesigning the show. Any chance?
That's brave.
And so the first time I saw it was technical rehearsal, and I was doing lighting and sound design, and it was like, well, this is...
Wow, I've never heard of that in the community theatre, a mutiny.
I don't know what... I think there was stuff outside the theatre,
that was
going literally on. The last rehearsal he was at, and I was there, was halfway through the rehearsal, he closed his book and went, this isn't working, I'm going, and left. And he's just like, you're the director, lead.
Yeah.
And so
not everyone is capable of.
Well, it wasn't a first-time director. He had directed before, and quite well, apparently.
Right.
I think one of his problems was he had a fixed idea how he wanted to do it, and on that stage he just physically could not do it. But that was the vision he had, and so trying to divorce himself from it, I think there was a little bit of not a loss of love, but that kind of, well, this isn't the one I want. this isn't the way I want to do it. But
See, I love that about this space. That annoys a lot of people here in this theatre. The building was never designed to be a theatre. The space has evolved over the years, and it is predominantly a box where you have to make your vision come alive in that box. You can't drop things in. You can't slide things in. You can't bring things up from below. You have a box, and you've got to make the vision work within that box.
Yeah.
But I do know that frustrates a lot of directors. But for me, that makes me be more creative.
I totally agree, because
it forces me into a position of, well, if I can't swing something in, if I can't drop that down, how else can this be done?
Yeah.
And I've never been in a position where I give up on that idea. And I saw that with this last production that was here, The Railway Children.
Yeah.
The director had some fantastic original ideas and an original vision. But within this space, that was very difficult. So he had to make adjustments. And it still turned out great.
Yes,
in a new way, in a different way.
It's asking the audience to use their imagination. And it's knowing what prompts an imagination to think the way you want them to think. So interesting, on the sound design front, I was chatting to one of the main sound designers for the Royal Shakespeare Company. And he turned around and went, we spent a lot of money to get underwater microphones to record for The Tempest. People drowning underwater. And once we actually listen to the recordings, like, no one's going to know what that actually is, because everyone has a fixed idea of what they think drowning sounds like, and it's splishing and splashing. But actually, if you're underwater, you don't hear any of that. So it was interesting that they had to revert back to what wasn't actually accurate, so that the audience could use their imagination and be on the same wavelength as they needed to be.
That's very interesting, because I find that film is stripping away as much as possible audience imagination. If you look at a lot of the big budget films now, it is so overconsumed and overpacked with CGI.
Yeah.
And fakery, I want to call it. That nothing, as an audience member, all you do is sit there and eat popcorn. Your brain does not need to do any thinking.
No, and one of my favourite shows for years has been The Woman in Black, which is two actors, a table, a chair. You know, for the majority of it, it's not much, but apart from sound effects and good acting.
Yeah. But as an audience member, you put yourself in that place, and you view it in a slightly different way than you do the rest of the world. Indeed.
You transport yourself to marshlands on a wasteland island and stuff like that.
Because none of that's really there.
No.
The
little dog's not there, the horse and cart's not there, but a little bit of acting and a little bit of sound effects, and your mind goes, okay, I accept that.
Yes.
And again...
And I feel I enjoy something a hell of a lot more than when it is 100%.
Indeed. No, I totally agree. Like I said earlier, even though technical theatre is a love, half the time I prefer the show which hasn't relied on a flashy effect just for flashy effect's sake. If you can justify it, brilliant. Like Back to the Future would not work without the car. So you have to have a decent prop for the car. Whereas I know you're not the biggest fan of it. If you look at Come From Away, that was 14 actors, 12 actors, 14 chairs and 2 tables.
Yes. And that's a wonderful thing with theatre, isn't it? That two people can view it and see it in a different way. And you can see it. I've seen things once and not too keen on it, and then seen it again and thought it's the best thing ever on a different day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example of that. A show that I've seen a lot of, not always intentionally, but I think it's because it's done a lot. Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I've seen that once or twice and thought, this show is awful. And then I've seen it again, done by a different group of people, and gone, wow, that was amazing. It's the same script, same songs, but the image, the thing that you take away was completely different.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly that Gilbert and Sullivan thing is different vision, different eyes, picking out different bits of the script.
Yes.
Right? Again, that's the creativity, isn't it? Is finding what connects to an audience, and knowing your audience is another big bonus. So community theatre, we know a lot of our audience demographics. We'd like to attract more demographics, but we know our cause. So it's knowing how to use that to our advantage when tailoring your play is something I've witnessed a good director do. So there's a group in Bishop Stortford who did a run of TV comedies, and they did very well for them. They then did some murder mysteries, and they also did very well, but with a very different different demographic. And suddenly the director popped up and went, I want to do a comedic murder mystery. And it broke records for the amount of tickets sold, because we'd suddenly gone, well, we'll nick that demographic and
merge them together.
Yeah. And it just, but it was a little insight like that going, well, actually, there's loads of friends who had come to see that, but not that. Why don't we try and entice them back? So it's interesting, business-led that a little bit, but he chose a particular show which would work for his audience. So.
There is a lot to consider if you want to bring an audience in, isn't there?
Oh, yes. As you know, I started a little theatre company in 2023, specialising in small-scale shows. And our first production was a musical which nearly no one had heard of. It's very predominantly just theatre people who knew it. And also, one of its biggest selling points, or one of its beauty moments, he didn't want to reveal too much about, because it was one of the little twists and one of the little nice pieces in it. So trying to market an unknown show with an unknown group
and not give the show away,
was just, it was a very hard thing to do.
Yes. What show was that? Was that Ordinary?
That was Ordinary Days.
Ordinary Days, yes.
We did Sawbridgeworth Then Here, which was lovely.
Yes, I saw it in Sawbridgeworth. I didn't get to see it when you performed it here. How did it go when you brought it here?
It went very well, actually. I think it improved a little bit.
Because you had the same cast. This was just 6 months later.
Yeah, same cast, same pianist, same technical crew on the same jobs. We did a little bit of adjustment on a couple of little characterizations, but also knowing the space, there is a moment where they threw leaflets as if off the top of a building, and it's supposed to rain down on the people below. At Sawbridgeworth, the stage was high enough that you could get a bit of a fall onto the people in front. Yes. Here, there isn't quite that depth to give that impression. We did take out the front row seats and use the front row as a bit of it. But I suddenly went, the tech box is literally just above the audience. Why don't we throw them out of there as well? And so during that song, he started to throw them, and myself and the sound guy started throwing the leaflets from the box, and it just added another dynamic for the audience, because suddenly you were in it. You're in these colours falling from the sky above you as they're singing about it. And yeah, it was just that extra little dimension really popped and brought it alive.
Can be a tricky thing revisiting a show, can't it?
It can, especially as if you've got a list of things you weren't necessarily happy with. You can over-tinker with it and over-play and...
over-polish.
Yeah, you lose the heart of it. Ironically, when we brought it here, by pure fluke, we avoided that because we had a couple of people who lost their voices just in the run-up to it, and it was a bit like, we have no understudies, there's only the four of you to rely on. We won't rehearse this night, we won't rehearse that night. And so we literally did our dress rehearsal on the Tuesday, and then rested voices Wednesday and Thursday, and performed Friday. And if you're a purist, you may have gone, it may not have been the slickest you've ever seen a production, but actually it gave that little bit of realism as one of the actors was chasing someone across the stage and then chasing another person as if in a crowd. Because actually he wasn't particularly sure which entrance they were going to use because he'd only done this in this space once. And that it played to its advantage in some ways because it wasn't over-polished.
There's something about actors keeping them on their toes as well.
Yes.
Isn't there? Something about keeping them not too relaxed, that they're not just going through the motions.
Very much so. It's always that joke of the first night, the adrenaline kicks in and it flies. Everyone does brilliantly because the adrenaline's got you through. Second night, it all falls apart because everyone goes, we've done it once. We're all good.
And then everyone starts overthinking everything.
Yeah. You always get that sort of mid-run slump, and then by the time you get to the end, everyone's back on the adrenaline going, it's the last night.
Yes. I often, if I come to see a show, always go, if it's a short run, like a week, I will go, right, I'm either going on the first night or the last night.
Yes.
Because they're the dodgy ones, the ones in between. that Friday night is always a bit of a lull.
Which is always hilarious because most people sort of turn up on a Friday night going,
well, that is the night to go out, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess that's the end of the week, start of the weekend. But the psychology of the people on the stage, I think, is that,
and especially so the musical theatre group, if they started on the Tuesday, by the time you got to Friday, they're not professional singers. Their voices are starting to suffer a little bit. So you've got that bit of a bit too relaxed, not quite.
Yes, yeah.
They do, hopefully they're not going to listen to something I'm being completely rude about them. It's not just them. They're just...
No.
It's every musical group I've ever worked with always has that little sort of overextend themselves and then,
Yeah. And I think we most of us want to give it our best, don't we? So that's why we push it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we're human beings. And I guess that's where training comes in.
Very much so. It's the training is also the discipline that training gives you is just fascinating. Working with one of the groups who come through here is made up of mainly trained people. They're doing it for the love, but they're all professionally trained performers. Watching their ability and energy level to go into a performance, be absolutely heartbreaking energy and, flawless energy, and then just come off the stage. They need half an hour of sort of calm down because they've put so much into it. But they know that my voice isn't 100%. They know how to get the same effect using a different route, which again is the creativity on the spur of the moment is, I'm not going to make that, so I'm going to do this way. It will still get the same effect. But it means I'm not going to do my voice in for the next two shows. Whereas you do find sometimes, if you're not that experienced, and I've done it myself, is you'll keep pushing through and then suddenly go, I've really done something stupid here.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I was thinking like that doesn't. I hate sentences that start like that. I was thinking like, but no, sorry. I was just thinking about where this all kind of started for you. Where you're saying about training. Do you have any kind of training within this theatrical world?
So a little bit, but not a degree in it or anything like that. So it all originally started because I didn't want to be a munchkin in the school play. And so the teacher...
The Wizard of Oz, Munchkin.
I was the Wiz.
The Wiz. Right,
so it was very much sort of... I got stuck at the back of the hall by a teacher who's going, well, you can sit there and what the rest of us will... And the sound desk was there, and I was very much a technical mind and love dials and lights and things which make weird noises. And so there was this kid in me, this young kid suddenly given access to a massive sweet shop, as it were, and I kind of went, I want to do that. And the sort of caretaker went, well, okay, I'll show you a bit, because the caretaker was looking after it. And it didn't stop. So I started there, and then when looking for a first job, it turned out I was pretty awful at waiting or bar work. So moved. Our local theatre sort of needed casual people, so went along, learnt a bit from there, moved to a bigger venue, learnt off there, and then someone from there went, "Can you come help here?" Did some work experience at other places, and it purely sort of organic networking, and suddenly you found yourself doing bigger and bigger.
Part of your life.
Yeah. I did walk away from it for about a year because I burnt out. I just fell out of love with it, didn't like it. Went and started an aviation career.
Okay.
But ironically, when living down in Bristol while doing the engineering licenses, my landlord was a stage manager for an amateur group, and as soon as he heard what I did, went, "Oh, we need someone to do ours." And I kind of went, "Oh, go on. I don't really know many people around here at the moment, so why not?" And it was one of the funnest experiences I've had in a theatre, because I turned up and they went, "This is the village hall." "Oh, brilliant. Yeah, the electrics have just been condemned." "Will they be fixed in time for the show?" "Possibly." Okay. And we did a whole panto with 16 lights because that's all we had. But every rehearsal ended up in the pub, every show ended up in a pub, and it was a little Somerset village, and it was...
Again, you were brought back into a community, brought back
very
into a
much.
collective.
To the point where even now, 10 plus years later, Becky and I will take a week to go down, do their January show. So yeah, that's the hilarious thing, is we'll take time away to go do a theatre show the other side of the country just for the lols.
Yes, yeah. Because you're part of that group.
Yeah. One of the other fun things, certainly from my point of view, is when the next show they did, they brought a band in, and their drummer was a lighting and sound guy who kind of took a break to do the drumming. And he kind of went, once he realised I knew what I was talking about, kind of went, "If I charge them a flat fee of this, I'll park a van out back. As long as everything's back on the van by Sunday, I don't care what you take off it, as it were." So we've packed that hall with some really stupid amount of kit over the years. So when we did Oliver, we had a full moving LED rig, full orchestra. Well, not full orchestra, 13, 14-piece orchestra. Every instrument mic'd, every kid mic'd, and all. It was just... I've done professional shows on far less than that.
Why is it, do you think, when you're doing something creative, like a show, people are willing to help and support with that vision and go that extra mile for you, like you say, giving you access to all this equipment?
I think if you're in the world, you understand the passion. If everyone's pulling towards the same goal, you want your show to be the best it can be. And if you can see that by doing X or Y, we'll just add that little something, and they'll go, "Yeah, I can see that. Go on, let's do it." Because you're not just asking for asking's sake. You're going, "It'd be really good if we can do this." And if you can get their buy-in and show your passion and your vision, they'll sort of go, generally, they'll go along with sort of go, "Okay, yeah, we can try and make that work." Or, I must admit, his other thing is, if he's got a new piece of kit, he'll want to use it in that particular environment, because we'll find the kinks, how to make it work right, or how it's broken or not working, before it goes out on a professional job and he's left with something not working properly on a professional job costing X amount.
So there's a logistical benefit as well.
There is. The amount of kit and techniques I've tried in spaces like this, because it gives me the chance to experiment and play with it and learn it before you're in a timed environment where people are going, "I need it now." What's lovely is when I do shows, I like training people. And 3 or 4 people I've trained as youngsters are now in the industry, which is both lovely for me because I started them on the journey and got them to a point where they found what they wanted to do with their life. but it's really useful being able to pick up the phone and go, can I just borrow? And then we go, yeah, go on. Because it's very much a sort of scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of.
Yeah. That we're all working together and that we've all got a shared goal. And if you're not necessarily working on it at that time, you'll understand the goal.
Yeah, very much so. And that's one of the things I've loved with doing things like the Christmas show here, is you're in such an environment that so many people put hours in beyond, and because the Christmas run here is quite a long one for a community space.
Yes, yeah.
Yet no one really grumbles, no one really, in terms of giving up time to paint a set or build a prop or Blind Witch in the Wardrobe, you look at the puppets built for that. I dread to think how much that would have cost commercially to do.
Yeah, but it was essentially all people coming together for the love of the show.
Yeah,
over nearly 9 months.
Indeed,
to put together for a 2-week run.
But the other lovely thing is, from that, when I did Around the World in 80 Days, a couple of people who learnt their skills building Aslan built an elephant.
Yes, yeah. So it goes on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's a skill that benefited other drama clubs in the area.
So I've seen recently through your social media that I know that you had a very busy 2023.
Yeah.
How's at this point we're just in the new year? How's this year looking for you? Anything going on right now?
Well, literally tomorrow start the get-in for Little Haddam Panto.
Okay.
Which is always fun. The hall is, from a technical point of view, is improving. They've got a lovely committee there, slowly improving it, but it is not designed for modern lighting at the moment. So the amount of cabling you've got to put in is always great fun. But they always punch above their weight in terms of their acting and design. And again, I think that's the closest I ever feel like I'm in the Archers, because it literally feels like a village affair.
Yes, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it is a very much village affair. And so they've got that. Then straight away down to Bristol for their show. March got Legally Blonde and Beyond a Reasonable Doubt in Stortford. May, there's a couple of shows at Much Haddam and Little Haddam. November's already filling up. So
you do have a very fulfilled diary there.
There are certain months where I think, again,
they have opportunity to be filled.
Yes, but there are certain months which every year seem to be a bit of a fixture jam. But that's because everyone's avoiding holidays and panto season, because the big pantos take a lot of money away from smaller groups if they try anything. This is a bit different, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
So November's quite busy as everyone tries to get their one in before Christmas. And March, because everyone's recovered from Christmas but wants to get it done before Easter.
So it sounds to me like community theatre can give you a very fulfilled life.
It can. And one of the advantages about doing technical is, because I work with so many different groups, I'm not tied to one style. So March, I'm going from a Jeffrey Archer play, which is very stylized, lighting, sound is very strict. It's a very stern play. And then literally we chuck that out the theatre, and I'm staying in the same theatre for a different group coming in the next week with Legally Blonde, and I'm mixing a full-blown musical of a cast of 30, I think, in that one. So
there's something in being slightly challenged, being stretched.
Yeah, it's one of those things where people say, why do you do so many? It's like, because the challenge is there. One group once turned around and said, could you please do a sound effect of 500 speaking weighing machines singing the Hallelujah chorus? Oh, when do you need it? Tomorrow? It's like, brilliant, we'll give it a go. And then another weighing machine had to sing a song about a murderer. But you had to also make that one light up at the same time, so you had to sync all of that up together.
Yes, yeah. So one of my final questions for you before I wrap this up I often find it hard as a director to sometimes put together a technical crew. There's fewer people that do the technical side than do the performing side. What words of encouragement would you give to someone to get involved with the side of the theatre that you're involved with?
It's a very fulfilling role. You're a vital part of the show, but I don't have to be seen. I have a script in front of me. I don't have any lines to learn. Especially when you start out and you're just operating a show, it's not the huge commitment that 3 months rehearsals. You can turn up for 2 weeks, get used to it. The other thing is, certainly if you're being mentored, is you don't necessarily have to do a full run. Mm-hmm. So Railway Children, I had a youngster do the matinees before Christmas. He got show experience, meant I also had a bit of time off from doing the show. Mm-hmm. So it's also, as much as we talk about not feeling sometimes it's the most creative, not feeling in oneself it's not creative, it is a great creative outlet for those people who don't want to be seen. I don't know, it's a hard one in some respects, because when you look at it, you are spending your entire life moving heavy boxes or things into a theatre, mm-hmm. hiding, we spoke about the fact that technicians don't always get the best rap from people, and then they are the last to leave. But there's just something about doing a good show. The challenge of, okay, I've got 30 kids. I know that 2 of them have got voices which are on the way of going, so I've got to keep an eye on them. I've got a full band to mix and all this sort of stuff. There's nothing like flying by the seat of your pants doing that. And that adrenaline it's a bit of an adrenaline junkie for those of us who don't want to go water skiing, I suppose.
A nice alternative.
Indeed.
Well, on that note, I really do appreciate your time, Will. Thank you.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me. It'd be nice to touch in again at some point, catch up with you.
Yeah.
Find out what you're doing maybe next time you're directing something. We could have a chat about that. Yeah,
it'd be lovely. Got a couple of projects we're looking at doing, but again.
Great. Well, let me know as soon as you're doing them, and we'll have a catch up and we'll find out what's going on.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Brilliant. Take care.
Take care. That's a nice way to end it. Take care. Thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for listening or watching. Thank you. What do you think?
Nah.
Was there anything you wanted to add, or?
I don't know.
I felt like we'd covered a lot. I felt. I'm getting quite a good feel for it. If we're going around it, if we could potentially go around in a circle. But if I can always jump back in if there's anything that you thought.
I don't know. It's one of those odd things.
You might come away late. That's why I like to add now in the end. We will do this again because you might watch this back and go, oh, I'd have liked to have said more on that. All right.
Well, it's that thing of from a technical point of view. It's always that sort of. I'm not necessarily the best at describing.
Oh, you'd be surprised, actually. There were some moments in there I was listening to you and I was like, that sounds really good. That's like some real moments of that you did give. I think that's the director in you. That you did give some real moments of inspiration.
It's an interesting one, but I love it because it gives you a chance to be involved. Mm-hmm. And as silly as it sounds, the amount of daft knowledge I have based on shows and stuff, which is completely pointless to know, but then led to other research. And I enrich my life by also exploring other things. So if you're designing a show in a time period you don't really know, mm-hmm. you have to go away and research the sounds for that. Mm. And actually, I don't know much about the 70s, the late 60s, early 70s, which Maiden Dagenham was based. Mm. So I like to go away and look at what sort of sound effects, what sort of doorbells you had, and then telephones, what you know. So it's silly stuff like that. You can learn a lot. And again, from a creative point of lighting, I didn't appreciate angles of lighting until I sat there and listened to the person who designed Warhorse. And he talked about how the different angles of lighting indicated different time periods of when you're in Devon, it was all very high, above lighting down, so naturally like the sun. But then suddenly when you're in a war, he kept everything low angled, so it gave different shadows, different effects on the Warhorse puppets and stuff like that. And I think that was, again, an eye-opening moment of creativity, because you're kind of going...
what you can do with this.
Yeah, it suddenly went, it's little insights that how you look at a script. Because, yeah, when I first started out, it was very much, we're doing a Noel Coward. Okay, it's a telephone and a doorbell and stuff like that. Still vital, still a bit creative, because your timings are vital. And, again, do you interrupt a speech? Do you give them that beat of letting something sink in before you cut in? But then you learn how to look at a script and pull out details of time periods of the year and time of day. But it's amazing how much lighting changes throughout a year, let alone. So as silly as it sounds, if you've got windows on set, what colour lighting are you putting through that window? Because if it's a December day, it's not going to be necessarily the crisp colour you would use in a summer show.
It's almost an opportunity there to assess and look at the world in a different way, isn't there?
As I've grown up, I have very much. And a lot of people who know me over the years have said I have an interesting outlook on life. And I suppose it is because I've spent so long looking at the world through a theatrical lens and through, just a visual lens, much more than I used to as a kid.
And I'd say that takes us back to the part of the conversation that we had earlier about the benefits that you can't measure. That's a benefit that you can't measure.
Indeed. It enriches my life a lot in the way I outlook on life. And also the amount of times you see people talking about everything in some people's worlds has a price and a cost. And it's like, but that's not the be-all and end-all of life.
No.
There is...
I think you've definitely given some great examples of the value that this can give, that community theatre can give. So thank you.
Yeah.
No, I do appreciate it. Thank you for your
time. It has been a pleasure. I'm not used to being...
No one is really. It is a different... it's quite a new thing, really. You know, in the past, something like this would have been seen as an interview.
Yes.
And you'd have got someone that studies the right way to interview someone, whereas this is just me and you, being ourselves and having a conversation.
Indeed.
And it's not, and within that, there is moments of finding out and interviewing, getting your opinions and stuff, but it's generally...
Yeah,
it's more of an insight into your perspective, isn't it?
It is, and oddly, just this completely little aside, but based on that, it's interesting how digital photography and filming has changed the way you can film stuff. So in the old days, where you had X amount of reels of film in a day, you had in the van. It's amazing how many actors would want to do another take, but they're going, no, we can't afford it because we need that stock of film to last all these scenes. Whereas now it's all on a hard drive. It's much easier to go, I just want another quick take. Yeah,
or the way that I'm presenting these conversations. I'm doing this uncut version, which is whatever time it wants to be.
Yeah.
There's no limitations on it. When it feels like it's an end, it's an end. If it wants to carry on, and people can jump in and out of that as they wish. But you couldn't do that with the old technology.
No.
You couldn't do that with film. You'd go, right, I've got enough film in that camera to last me 60 minutes. I better work out a way to structure it within that. But yeah, I think you lose something within that structure.
you certainly do in sort of an interview situation.
Yes, yeah.
Because as you say,
and then I guess it's up to me as an editor now to pick out those moments.
Yes.
Of value.
See, that's a bit of creativity. I found out this year, last year now. I am awful at marketing.
Right.
Just genuinely.
Yeah.
It's something I thought, oh no, I can do that. It's just sharing a bit of social media and no, absolutely dreadful.
It's a technique. Social media is a new tool that we can't just assume because we consume it that we know how to use it.
Indeed. I was guilty of that totally.
Yeah, like TV, we all watch TV. Doesn't mean we can all make a TV program. It is exactly the same with social media. And I'd say I've done a lot of self-studying with social media. And I understand it's a constantly evolving machine, social media. And you have to keep up with what they call the trends.
Yes, I'm not very trendy at the best of times.
But when I say trends, I think our mind goes to, right, a trend is something like, when at the beginning of TikTok, it used to be about dance routines. It's not necessarily that the dance routine is the trend. It's the how is the information being shared is the trend.
Well, the life hack videos, which were everywhere a couple of years ago, now died back a bit now.
Yes, yeah.
As you say, it's that wave of no, we're going to try something else now.
And then justify, and then thinking to yourself, right? You've got this tool, social media, which is a place on the internet where you can reach all different types of people. But how do you reach them?
That's
the
community theatre. That's one of those weird things, which is the complete difference in how groups handle advertising a show via their social media. Does tend to show the group I first started with, sadly, is fairly on its last legs
because they're not keeping up with the changes.
They haven't embraced it in any meaningful way. Someone comes along and sort of goes, "Oh, I'll do a bit," but
you can't ignore the world around you.
No,
you can't. The world changes constantly, and you can't stay fixed in how it was done 20 years ago.
No, it's ironically one of the shows I directed recently. That particular drama club were brilliant because they turned around and I turned around and said, I would like to do this in a thrust stage rather than is it a thrust stage or a transverse? Basically, audience both sides with entrances either end of the stage. And they went, well, we've never done anything like that. We've only ever done box type sets on the stage. And I was like, but they they got behind it and went, okay, let's do it. Admittedly, LED lighting was a bit of a surprise to that particular drama club because they hadn't done it before either. It was a brilliant experiment. Some of their people stuck their nose up and kind of went, no, it's not for me. Fair enough, that's their opinion. But at least they tried it. I give them full credit for allowing me the chance to. Whereas I know that there would be other groups where the committee would sort of go, well, that's not what we do. We do this.
I guess it's the older generation that are more. They learned something that worked. And they'd like to keep it working.
I can't. Yeah,
I guess that's the argument. It worked at one point. It worked for a while.
Yeah,
but yeah, again, I'll go back to the world is changing constantly. The world is evolving.
Yeah,
people are changing. They always have done.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, and one of the things was recently the musical Dear Evan Hansen. When that first came out, everyone was really enamoured with it and saying it was a brilliant portrayal of this and that. In recent times, actually, a lot of people have been quite down on the main character of it and his motivations.
Right, okay.
And it's less than 10 years old. It's probably about 6 or 7.
Yeah,
but in that short period, it's gone from the best thing ever to...
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's been certainly a big shift in the way it's perceived. I mean...
Is it because it was a piece of that time? Of that moment,
I think the staging certainly was very of that time.
Yes.
And it was a very particular...
Showing the text messages in the background and... when text messaging was...
And the way they interacted with the technology as well.
We've already moved
things
on
like the
from
emails.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
As much ironic, I was joking with a friend yesterday that I still remember floppy disks, etc. And yet my younger cousins and friends asked, why have you got a 3D printed version of the save button? And it's like, no, that got no idea why the save button is that shape. But that's the save button.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? I've never thought about that, the save button.
Yeah, it is. But to them, it's never been a thing. But
just an icon to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're not particularly that old yet. We remember those and the things before them. And
yeah. Yeah, and going back to the marketing, that is the thing with the marketing. You have to evolve with what's happening. You have to...
Especially if we want to bring new audiences in.
Yeah, and you have to look at how to use the tool. You, literally look at how to use it. It isn't just you post something and therefore the right people see it. No, you have to look into the analytics and you have to look into the data and you have to consider paying. And that's something that's hard for our age group because we were around when the internet was born.
Yes.
And everything was free.
I think the interesting one is YouTube, of course, is trying to get you to do premium for no adverts. And as you say...
Yeah, we grew up with it being absolutely free. And we grew up without it being free and without adverts.
Indeed.
That we remember the days where adverts were brought in and you was like, oh, adverts are now on it. Okay, I accept that. And then all of a sudden it was like, now you have to pay for it as well. And, and even now there's a Amazon Prime now. You pay for it, but you're going to have adverts on there still.
Oh.
Unless you pay the premium. So you're paying for something with adverts and unless you want to pay more. So it's I know we live in a society where money is what drives which drives everything. But the internet felt different when it started. It was a freebie, wasn't it?
It was. And again, you look at the creativity that used to afford people. When it was just for fun, not because someone was trying to make money out of it.
Yes.
And then what it allows you to do now, you straight away someone goes, oh, we'll monetize that. And it's like, but that's not what it's about.
I guess, though, is there a value in what the social media can do for you? So, for instance, when I put on a children's show here, I can put on a poster I can put a post on Instagram, the poster of the production. Yeah. And I can make sure the perfect demographic see that. So I'll put on a show, Jack and the Beanstalk was the last one that I did. And I can make sure that all the mums that have children between the age of 3 and 10 years old within a 5-mile radius of this building will see that advert.
Yeah, that is the power of it, isn't it?
So is that actually worth money? I'd say yes, that is worth money.
Well, in the old days, you'd spend X amount on leaflets as part of your marketing campaign. It is just the modern equivalent of
the leaflet. And the leaflet is, I'd still say it's necessary.
Yeah. So one of my groups, but interestingly, one of my groups used to hand them out down the market. Right, sort of, or on the high street during Saturdays. They've given up on that. They've now sent out on a mail shot, paid for someone to deliver for 1,000 plus of them.
Yes, yeah.
And that works better for them.
Yeah, it's fine. You've got to test things out. Got to test the markets. Got to test the audiences. But there's definitely something with getting that leaflet in people's hands as well, because you can just scroll past and ignore an advert. You can just go like that, swipe, and it's gone. But when you get a leaflet, it has to be in their hand and they have to make a decision. Am I going to screw this up and put it in the bin, or am I going to stick it up on the pinboard and possibly go to that later? They have to consciously choose what they're going to do with it.
One of the things just you pick up on, you talk about kids shows. It's one of the things I find fascinating is how different people look at kids shows. Because some people look down on them a bit because they don't feel them important. But when I grew up, my local theatre where I grew up used to put on at least twice a month cheap midweek sort of small kids shows. Mm-hmm. Just because they could. They were only a 200-seat little theatre, very similar to this in feel. I used to see a lot of people regularly there. You had this little theatre group of kids who used to go watch these shows. I reckon 90% of them are still active in the creative arts as a career now.
That's definitely the case for me.
But, so how are we going to grow our audiences for the future, especially when you're combating computer games, which are a form of art form, but again, for downtime after work or school, you got to face the online world. We need to make sure that creativity is going to continue in the next generation. Yeah, especially as you say, so many councils now can't afford to or feel that they can afford to keep arts going. So that's one of my big worries. Is
I think we just have to keep fighting for what we believe in, what we see as a benefit to us, and it informed film and theatre. From a young age, informed my entire life. It gave me the foundations for how I was gonna, for everything I was gonna do, and did. I didn't know it. I didn't know when my aunt and uncle took me to a pantomime that was what I was gonna want to do with the rest of my life. I sat there and just absorbed the entertainment as a child.
My dad still remembers the first time he took me to the local panto, because I apparently leant over and went, "Dad, that Aladdin's a girl." Well, yes. Princess hasn't noticed yet. No. She's going to get a surprise. Yeah. And he's just sitting there trying not to laugh his head off at the accidental innuendo of this. But we went back year after year, and he didn't know from that first panto that actually 10 years later I'd be doing the lighting and sound for that particular panto, and then... Yeah. But, it's fun looking back at it, actually, and seeing where the creativity started. Because, again, I don't often look backwards introspectively as I probably should do. No. Don't get time to.
You don't, do you? But that's what we're doing sitting down here. We're having a moment to look back, and that can help propel us forward as well. So, I'm conscious of time because I know that Jared's keen to come in here. And then there's a dance group in here later.
Ah, yes, okay.
So we ended this early, but I think this is the real end now.
Yeah.
Because I think we've covered some important topics in the continuation of just having a conversation. So thanks once again, Will. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll go around. We'll do this again. Thank you for having me.
And I'm sure we're going to catch up again soon.
Be lovely.
Thank you, Will.
Right, take care.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you. That was the BTS Creative Academy podcast, Uncut. I appreciate you joining us for this conversation. If you'd like to find out more about the BTS Creative Academy, just search BTS Creative Academy. And so that you don't miss out on any future conversations, don't forget to like and subscribe.